Welcome to Horrorland, where nightmares come to life.
Alternative dates. Alter skin of her bones.
Karu Marie O'Donna, Loma Milano Carano.
What's up, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of Shiver Shelf, where today we'll be talking about the 8th installment in Goosebumps. The Girl Who Cried Monster. The phrase on the front of The Girl Who Cried Monster, she has the monster of all problems. And the phrase on the back, she's telling the truth, but no one believes her. Actually, that's not really a phrase. It's more like, it's a statement, really. Now, what's this story about? Lucy likes to tell monster stories. She's told so many that her friends and family are sick of it. Then one day, Lucy discovers a real live monster. The librarian in charge of the summer reading program. Too bad Lucy's told so many tall monster tales. Too bad no one believes a word she says. Too bad the monster knows who she is and is coming after her next. Let's start with the cover of this book. The cover is actually a bit intriguing. I mean, there's nothing too weird going on. It's just Lucy spying on Mr. Mortman, the librarian, and he's got a fly between his fingers, and nothing's going on that's weird except he's just looking at it with what looks like hungry intent. And Lucy just has this shocked expression of he was going to do something. She probably doesn't know what in the cover, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be something good. And Mr. Mortman's face is kind of enough for you to look and go, okay, that guy looks a bit creepy. And now, to the story. I'm actually really shocked because when I started reading this, I was instantly hooked to the story. It almost felt like reading Night of the Living Dummy all over again. It had a lot of atmosphere and description to it. R.L. Stine built up and described all of the settings that this story takes place in. You almost feel like you're there. And every time Lucy is doing something, or she sees something that's really shocking, you feel the same emotions she's feeling. When it describes the library as this old house that just some hermit gave away and made into a library, you can imagine just this old musty smelling building, and you can picture just like the cobwebs in the corner of every room. And another thing that I really liked about this story was how it described Mr. Mortman when he finally transformed. And at first, whenever Lucy is talking about Mr. Mortman, she is just like, he's weird, but he's a good guy. He's not really doing anything bad. Like, his hands are like always wet. You're just looking at him and you're just like, he does sound kind of gross and kind of weird, but that's probably it. He's probably a really good, nice guy. But whenever he finally transforms, when everybody but Lucy is out of the library and she's hiding in a corner, R.L. Stine just like lets his imagination go and he wonderfully describes the monster. It is just, when you're reading it, you just look at it and just like, that is possibly the most repulsive sounding monster I've ever heard in my life. And whenever Mortman transforms, he goes from this kind guy who's a bit awkward to basically this brutal monster that eats literally anything that's in front of him. He has a jar of flies and he has a jar of turtles, and he usually, I guess, feeds the flies to the turtles, and he'll just like scoop in a big handful at one point and just eat it. And whenever Mortman transforms and Lucy sees it, she kind of gets the same idea as King Arthur. Run away! Run away! Run away! So yeah. And this story just like sucks you in. With all the other stories I've read before, and believe it or not, a little bit with Night of the Living Dummy, I actually had a little bit of a hard time getting into the story. I mean, it took me a good couple of chapters to actually get into the story and have a hard time putting it down. But with this one, I actually felt like that maybe like 2 chapters in. I mean, after I got past the 2nd chapter, I was instantly hooked. There was one point where I was reading it where I picked it up for a good hour, maybe hour and a half, and I didn't put it down. I mean, it's just that good of a story. However, even though I do praise this story, I do have a little bit of a problem with it. First one, and it's actually kind of minor, I can actually see where kids relate to Lucy with this, but she seems like kind of a sadist. And I don't mean she physically hurts anybody. No. That's not the case. I mean, like, she enjoys scaring people with her stories. Really enjoys it. But whenever you see Lucy, like, kind of just scare people just for the heck of it, you're almost thinking that she might just be a sociopath and just nobody knows it. It's kind of scary. And then there's her friend Aaron, which honestly, he doesn't seem like the best friend. I mean, whenever Lucy asks for his help, oh sure, I'll help you, just pay me. And she does the respectable thing and pays him to help. But what happens the next day? Oh yeah, I had a dentist appointment and I just decided not to tell you. And he like never tries to help because he's just like, oh right, yeah, because he just doesn't believe her. Speaking of not believing her, that's kind of a problem I have. Not that nobody believes her, I totally understand why nobody believes her. It's just apparently Lucy doesn't understand why nobody else believes her. You'd have figured she'd be able to put 2 and 2 together and gone, oh yeah, I told so many stories that I lied about that now everybody thinks I'm lying about this. It's not that hard to follow. And believe it or not, I kind of have a problem with the ending and the twist. Do not get me wrong, the ending and the twist are actually really good. I mean, when you get to it, you'll look at it like, what the heck? What? But the thing is that I feel like both the ending and the twist are kind of rushed. We don't get time to understand what just happened or why it happened. It's just like, oh, this happened, Mr. Mortman's dealt with, the end. And even though it is a good twist, you kind of are left with a feeling of, I got cheated out of an ending and twist. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to give The Girl Who Cried Monster a 7.5 out of 10. This story is just flat out amazing. It's one of the best stories, and I see why a lot of people say it's one of the most underrated stories. But it just has some problems that just hold it back. Would I really recommend it? I sure as heck do, and I hope you guys do pick this story up because it's definitely a good one. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time, because it's time for dinner, my timid friends. Bye.